Welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Gardner, co-founder and CEO of Hiline. Today on the podcast, we're very lucky to have Belle, Chief Revenue Officer of Justworks. John's got a lot of great knowledge to share about PEOs and some of the benefits of working with a PEO. There's a lot of great tidbits of knowledge about what it's like to scale a company. So let's get into it. John, welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast, man. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for the invitation, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think, John, just for the audience, give a quick bio for yourself, your background, where you've been, how you came to find Justworks, and what a day in the life of a chief revenue officer at Justworks is.
Sure. So yes, Chief Revenue Officer at Justworks. So what that means is that I lead our sales, our partnerships, our customer success, and what we call our revenue effectiveness team. Justworks revenue effectiveness is the marriage of traditional revenue ops and revenue enablement into this unit that we've named revenue effectiveness. So the idea being that we want people who aren't just creating PowerPoints or aren't just creating like trainings. We want them to be accountable for the usefulness of all of that when it comes to driving revenue. So essentially, I've got everything that's customer facing outside of marketing.
Awesome. How long have you been with Justworks?
I joined in November of 24 after about a 6-year run at PayPal.
And the customer effectiveness thing, did you coin that? Did you make that up, or did you borrow it from another company out there? Because I love it.
To be candid, I think I stole pieces of it from the best places I've ever seen. But yeah, I think the name came from a brainstorm that I had and found a ready home for that here at Justworks.
Love it. So can you give us like a little, I think most people know who Justworks is, but maybe just a little bit about the company and why what Justworks does matters to small businesses.
Yeah, it's the reason I'm here, frankly. So Justworks as a business model is what's called a PEO. That's a professional employer organization. And we are built to help small businesses and nonprofits grow with confidence by taking care of their payroll, compliance, benefits, and HR. And our mission is to support entrepreneurs, small businesses, and their teams so that they can focus on what they do best as opposed to a bunch of red tape. I joined, like I said, after being at PayPal. I've had a long career in tech and tech adjacent sales and revenue driving activities. But I joined because I love helping small businesses. In all my career, no one has been more grateful for the work that I've done than small businesses. Enterprises can drive great revenue and we can have great relationships. But I was attracted by Justworks' almost zealous commitment to making the best possible experience for small businesses because they believe that they're the backbone of an economy. And when those kind of companies are well served, they perform this interesting magic act. They create jobs out of thin air. And then those jobs nurture and sustain employees and their families and ultimately their communities, which I think is pretty cool stuff. And so that was the hook that got me here.
Kindred spirits, man. That's our whole thing in Hiline too. We love small businesses. We love nonprofits. And we're just working every day to try to help it make easier for them to do business.
Yeah.
So I love that. So we have a great partnership with Justworks at Hiline. We actually are a Justworks customer ourselves at Hiline. I think maybe I could just help explain the difference between two different experiences small businesses have. Like you can either keep everything in-house and you can employ everybody yourself and you can put them on payroll and you still have all the administrative stuff you need to do to make the whole thing work. Or you can leverage a PEO model, which is essentially, it's like an employee leasing arrangement where Justworks or PEO will technically employ your employees and you will lease them back. And there are a lot of benefits and cost savings opportunities and economies of scale that make that a really interesting model. But it still requires somebody to push the buttons and to be a facilitator and to be handling some of the administrative stuff that goes into making everything run. So our people operations model can do both, but we've had a lot of success with the PEO model. We've been able to find some really nice cost benefits on the benefit side, specifically for small businesses, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So before we get into that, how many customers does Justworks have today?
A little over 14,000.
14,000. You know a thing or two about small business. So obviously right now, I think everybody's very unsure of what is going on. Is our economy strong? Is it weak? You know, the stock markets are a good indicator of the public markets, but there's never been a good indicator of the small business markets. What are some of the challenges that you think small businesses are facing today?
Yeah. I think it's a universal truth that no one starts a small business because they're convinced that the future is all laid out for them. I would say that the biggest challenges today are actually double-edged swords. And what I mean by that, Matt, is complexity and bandwidth. On the one hand, so barriers to forming and operating small businesses have really dropped over the last 10 years. Technology lets you scale and access customers worldwide if you wanted to. And you can do that for a fraction of the cost that you used to do it in the past. And you also have access to talent in a very geographically dispersed way versus maybe in the past being constrained by who you could find in your zip code. But the other side of that sword is complex compliance requirements, whether they're multi-state or international commerce or employment rules, talent expectations. Finding the best talent means, you're going to want to have some element of benefits, some sort of compensation, understanding of the market. You got to know what perks you need to offer and what market. And frankly, you've got tighter budgets maybe than you've ever had to work with in the past because, hey, that health insurance to attract that top talent, it ain't cheap. And so I think the biggest challenge, notwithstanding what the economy might be looking like at any given day, is small business owners are being driven to do more to compete and without being experts in every single part of their go-to-market. And then I'd say the last thing that's universally true is that access to capital to grow and operate your small business, it's no easier now and arguably might be harder now.
I think that's super relevant. We started Hiline 8 years ago. Started it with $1,000 and a laptop, and that was pretty much all it took. Because you can, to your point, there's little friction to starting a business today, which is incredible. And I do think you're touching on like the ability to be a generalist. I think is really important right now because everything has got more complicated. I don't think we're not making it easier to do business ecosystem here. I think there's just a lot of regulation compliant. Like now you can go cross state, employ whoever you want to, as long as you can attract them. That comes with a whole bunch of challenges to be a multi-state employer when you're small. And access to capital is tough. I think everybody's been puckered up for a bit. And it's just kind of like a lot of uncertainty, a lot of change. Technology is changing so quickly. You got to know how to embrace it and embed it into your business. But I think the silver lining to your point is like there's also lots of opportunity too right now
Yeah.
because everything is changing. Technology is getting better. So what are some of the things that you're seeing some of your small business companies do that's helping them thrive right now?
Yeah. It's an interesting question because we get to see over 14,000 customers. We see all of the prospects that we talk to. We look at markets across the US and the world now pretty closely to make certain decisions about how to operate our business. And if you step back, I think there's some philosophical things that are universally true. That number one, companies who are mission focused, who are soft wired around strategy, and who are focused on employee well being, I think they're doing well, at least well in comparison to those that aren't doing those things. So those sorts of things, they always seem to break through uncertainty. From a pure sector, if I were from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I would say there are some sectors which are experiencing tailwinds, and all of them are generally finding tech-enabled capabilities, giving them some of that wind in their sails. Services that are tech-enabled, healthcare, where small businesses associated with the healthcare industry have figured out how to crack through using capabilities that are technologically based. Nonprofit organizations, we're seeing a real up leveling in employment at nonprofit organizations where they're leaning into operations. They've always been people first cultures, but now making those people even more productive is allowing them to do more with somewhat less. Consumers are being squeezed by inflation. There's pretty much no doubt about that. What we are seeing is consumers are increasingly looking at local, personalized, and niche offerings in their area as opposed to a preference for mass market brands, as long as the cost differential between those things isn't too egregious. There's a rising demand for mental health services, fitness, elder care, wellness is a big growth area that we're seeing. I will say, because we sort of mentioned it a minute ago, that small businesses are able to now hire outside their zip code, and that includes even international. And what we're seeing real rapid growth in what I think is an interesting play, because you can now hire outside the US if you wanted to, you can experience sort of almost enterprise class arbitrage on labor. The availability of skill sets at a consistent basis worldwide are real. And so what you're seeing is small businesses who are looking outside their markets. They might want to hire three web designers or a CFO in Mexico City or Prague for the expense of one of those in a much more expensive market.
Yeah, and I think it's why it's so hard to know. Is it good? Is it bad? I think it depends. I think what you said about tech enablement is true, right? I think every business is getting tech enabled or should be getting tech enabled. It's just a function of what does that mean for you and your business. But if you're not doing that, you're going to get passed by pretty quickly. But I think if you use technology the right way, you can lower the administrative burden.
Yeah. The pace of that is picking up so much. There's somebody right now in a garage with an AI knowledgeable person next to him. That's not me today, but I would
Yeah,
have somebody on my left or my right. And they're designing a better system than some enterprise class or mid-market company has today. And they're going to do it on $1.95 in a box top. And they're going to blow those other companies out of the water.
yep, I agree 100%. So let's pivot a little bit. So I gave my very general opinion on the difference between an HRIS and a PEO, but you do this every day. Maybe before we get into benefits and compliance matters, give us your version of that. And this also like an opportunity for a humble brag about JustWorks, what makes you different and unique.
So the first is an easy one, right? An HRIS system is a software or a SaaS package that helps you, an employer, manage HR tasks. But you're then still on the hook for compliance, benefits administration, and frankly, you own all of the risk associated with those things. And small businesses tend not to want to own that, or they don't know how to do that or juggle those things. The
That's right. So like before you keep going, so we had Gusto on the podcast recently, and they're an example of an HRIS. And with their platform will tech enable the HR payroll side of your business, but you have to know how to use it, which is why it's helpful to have someone like Hiline manage it because small businesses just they have a really hard time knowing how to do that. So keep going. This is great.
Yeah, a PEO, on the other hand, and I'm just something you said a few minutes ago. You talked about leasing the employees back. That's not how I would characterize it. A PEO is a professional employer organization, is what we call a co-employer. And so
Ooh,
hire somebody, yeah, when you hire somebody,
yep.
they're going to sign two employment agreements. You control absolutely everything about the operation of that employee. Justworks or another PEO aggregates that employment agreement on our part for the purpose of going to healthcare insurance providers or other benefits providers
Yep.
and negotiating on the basis of the total aggregate of co-employed employees that we have. So yeah, we have 1,400 employees at JustWorks who are FTEs, but we negotiate on your behalf on the basis of having over 14,000 employees. And then what it means from a practical perspective is that we handle the compliance, we provide access to all of those benefits, we manage payroll taxes and more. It's like less DIY and more peace of mind for you. A good PEO, in addition, can be really consultative. So we'll help you write an HR policy handbook, or we'll help you mature the one that you already have based on what we know and what we've seen from not just around the US, but from your specific marketplaces. If you're thinking about growing into other states, a PEO can help you think about that or other countries. They're just a great way for you to begin moving off of pure payroll and into much more robust benefits offerings for employees without having to own all of that.
Yep. But the benefit too of a PEO is that you can go negotiate much better rates on the benefit side. Anything else you want to pitch on JustWorks before we move on?
I think I would tell you a story. So it's late August here when we're recording this. And what we've recently been explaining to our customers and to the market in general is that your PEO, they should be advocates for you. And so the specific example is during COVID, the federal government launched these employee retention tax credits for small businesses. And they were supposed to pay a lot of money based on the employee count that you had. But the bureaucracy totally jammed these payments up for a long time. Over the last 5 years, we were able to facilitate the delivery of about $350 million of those credits for our customers.
Incredible.
It gets a little bit better. In the last 12 months, we collected a bunch of customers and we went to some senators and some Congress people and badgered them, quite frankly, to release funds that were owed to our customers but hadn't been paid. And so we got about $90 million that had been delayed, pushed out to our customers. In addition, what we found was that the IRS was paying interest on those funds. And so what we were able to do with the help of people like Congressman Dan Goldman, Senator Schumer and Gillibrand from New York is get the IRS to pay those additional funds. And so on average, the companies we're dealing with had 10 to 12 people and they were given what they were owed, which is $159,000 each on average, and that's a pretty substantial impact.
A lot of capital.
Well, yeah, exactly right.
And
And so that's what you get with a PEO besides just somebody doing the work for you. And we're really proud about how we did that on behalf of our customers.
yeah, that's incredible. Before we go on to talking a little bit about benefits and compliance, and I touched on this earlier, like what we find, well, because we do have clients who use JustWorks PEO model, but there's still this sliver of service that is still needed. Because sometimes the founder is like, can you just go facilitate? Because I don't want to really do much of it. I just don't really understand it. Can you help me ask the right questions? To force us to think about what's the service wrapper now. If it's not an HRIS, there's still like this role that we're playing. So we're in the process of kind of actually figuring out what our SKUs as a service provider look like because there's sometimes still a preference to be completely hands off. I don't want to think about it. It scares me.
Yeah.
So we look forward to trying to figure that out with you guys as we continue to scale. But let's talk benefits. You ready?
Yeah, let's talk benefits.
So we talked about the buying power you have when you're negotiating on behalf of 100,000 employees. What's the full spectrum of benefits that you can handle as a PEO? And how does that advantage translate down into cost savings?
It's anything that's available in the market. But, we should be fair that not every PEO offers the same spectrum of benefits. And
Yep.
there's different PEOs for good reasons. Not everyone is suited for every sector or every kind of customer. My guidance to anybody listening to this would be if you're curious about PEOs, you'll need to diligence this in the context of your own business. But you would absolutely expect that every one of them should have the ability to do your payroll on a multi-state, and hopefully, if you're looking outside the US on a multi-country basis, that includes all of the compliance elements. Beyond that, from a pure benefits perspective, the primary use case is healthcare insurance, which what you want to do is you want to be exploring for each of these PEOs, whose insurance are they offering? A lot of PEOs operate and they're tied to a very specific healthcare insurance provider. We've made the decision to be multi-provider. We have multiple avenues. You can be with one plan, you can be on an open market. So there's lots of options that we try to
So
provide.
Excellus, Aetna.
That's right. Yeah, it's called benefits optionality. And again, for some companies, that's super important, having the options. Others, they don't want that. They just want to be able to offer one thing and not have to worry about, well, multiple things. And then beyond that, there's a set of what I would classify as essentially perks or lifestyle benefits. You can have all sorts of capabilities built into the PEO. And a lot of PEOs like JustWorks, we have a marketplace that you can access capabilities that aren't native to the product, but you get yourself some advantages by going through our marketplace, whether you want to do an LMS, if you want to have some capabilities around IT provisioning, right? So onboarding and offboarding of employees and the delivery or the recovery of your IT assets and your software. That's embedded in our product, but we use a third party to do that. And so there's lots of different variations out there. But again, you probably would expect healthcare insurance and some base benefits to be built in there.
Yep. So the health insurance rates are negotiated annually. So what time of year are you going back to the table to renegotiate with the carriers? Is it like this time of year, getting ready for enrollment season for everybody?
We are in renewal season now. Not everybody's in the same. This is another thing that the small businesses, I think, have to be aware of. Not every PEO operates on the same cadence with their carriers, especially if they're locked in on one carrier. If you're locked in on multiple carriers, that experience can be a little bit challenging. So there's a high consultative bar that we need to clear in order to help our customers through that. But yeah, if you remember, most of us have to sign up for new benefits in November. So yeah, we're in the renewals.
Yeah. So on the health insurance side, can't underestimate the cost savings potential there for a small business when you do work with a PEO. Do you have an example or a reference point, like somebody who moved from a traditional HRIS to a PEO and helping them understand this is what it costs you for the software and health insurance pre? Here's what it costs you for the software because Justworks has an incredible platform. I think you have the best platform, in my opinion, in terms of UX and the health insurance on top of it. So, like, I'm sure you're constantly having that conversation to just show the bundled cost. What's a fair expectation for someone walking in with 10 or 15 employees to expect in terms of what the health insurance savings could be?
I would love to give you an answer to that question because it would make my life so much easy. If an answer to that question could be just sort of grabbed and given.
Yeah.
The truth is, the company itself matters. The risk associated with any given go to market, industry, location, et cetera, that dictates the range that a company is going to experience. The PEOs themselves, whoever it might be, live within that range. And then they have to make economic decisions about, how much risk are they going to absorb? Because in general, PEOs own some element of risk before this goes to a healthcare insurance provider. It would be so much easier if it was here's $12,000 and I'm better than that guy and that guy's better than me. It doesn't work that way. And I would say that there's one thing that probably isn't going to be obvious though, and that is in addition to whatever savings you can get on healthcare insurance, you have to look at the package and understand how much time am I going to get back and what is the value of that time? And those two things together should be how you evaluate these options. It's not one number might clearly be bigger than the other, but don't forget it's a two element calculation.
Yeah. And I can share just some experience from when we had first started the company and I was doing all founder sales all the time. So one of the entrees that I would use when we were trying to sell our managed people services offering, if they were on Paychecks or ADP, sorry, Paychecks or ADP, I would just get a copy of their bill and I would be able to show them that you're paying for a non-managed solution for just a library of stuff that you have to self-serve and access. It would be cheaper to move to a modern HRS with a managed service and you would get your time back. Like you said, the world has changed. That was probably 5, 6 years ago. So the world has changed a lot in both the HRIS and the PEO model. I think COVID also helped open people's eyes to I don't have to use the payroll company down the street that was processing everything by hand. That's still like very common for small businesses, actually, which is surprising. But yeah, it's been eye opening how expensive it can be and how it's like one of those costs that people just don't think about. They just assume they have to incur it because it's the only option.
I don't think they see the cost to your point about a bundle. So when you really sort of look at this, or if you never end up with a PEO, it still may be worth talking to one so that
Yeah.
you hopefully just see how they've pulled these constituent elements apart. And then you can have a look at what you've got yourself and go, oh, I realized I was paying a fee on a fee for that particular
Fee on
capability.
a fee. On a fee.
Yeah. No idea. So all of that, again, whether you end up going down that path as a small business or not, whether it's right for you or not, just the comparison experience can be really eye opening.
100%. It's like when we hire employees or we go through performance review cycles and new compensation adjustments, it's not just the salary, it's the benefits and everything else. It's the full package. You just have to look at the entire thing.
Yeah.
So I love that. Okay. Can we talk about nonprofits for a second? Because we love nonprofits. It's becoming probably the biggest sector that we work in and serve. Obviously, lots of compliance challenges. They have boards, they have to get audits, they have 990 filings, but sometimes can be challenging to get top talent to come to a nonprofit because of budget constraints. How do you think the PEO is uniquely positioned to help nonprofits?
We're seeing real growth in the nonprofit area for PEOs in general. We're experiencing it ourselves. You made a very interesting and I think relevant point, which is people don't go to nonprofits because they're going to get rich, right? They're not there for the base compensation. But when a nonprofit can offer a set of benefits and perks, that can draw talent that it might not otherwise get with the compensation model that they're able to offer. That's number one. Number two, all of the attendant complexities, compliance coverage, et cetera, that a PEO delivers are really valued by nonprofits, because if you think about it, they don't have the capital, nor do they typically have the staff or the infrastructure or the time to deal with the legal elements. So attracting talent, reducing risk, and then raising the overall ability to attract and retain talent is what we're seeing most.
Yeah, we see a lot. And this is just normal how business has always been done. But we find that usually their insurance provider is either a current or former board member.
Oh, interesting.
Like there's always, everybody's got a person, and there's
Mhm.
usually somebody's invested some time in the relationship. And it makes sense that you want to reciprocate for energy and effort and all that stuff. But I think that, there's a cost associated with that to the organization. And you got to be true to yourself and you got to do what's best for the organization long term. So we try to promote, like, no matter the relationship, a board member, if they're there for the right reason, they're not necessarily going to care if you move off of whatever they're providing. Like, just be willing to have the conversation to make sure you do what's best to eliminate the administrative burden and the cost that may come with those decisions that got made a long time ago. So it's a little gnarly sometimes and it's probably uncomfortable, but I think it's, man, there's just so many good options out there.
Do you think that differential between the default situation and the more mature situation, is that just good governance?
I think it's governance and a little bit of courage, right? So you're always grateful because I've served on lots of nonprofit boards. I'm sure you have served on nonprofit boards. I think that's one of the only ways a nonprofit feels they can pay it forward. I want to thank you for your service. This is what we're going to do. And I also think that's where they source a lot of their information, right? Their board is there to help govern. When they have these needs, you bring it to the board and the board, they're not selfishly doing it, but then you end up with all your solutions being tied to the board.
Yeah.
And we've seen it a lot and it's okay and it works. But I think that oftentimes if it's not a well curated system, it doesn't all stitch together and they live in disparate systems that live on a piece of paper, that makes it really tough on the organization to stay compliant and to do business.
I think you're right, and I think that actually is very wise as a root cause and driver of what we're seeing relative to the uptake of nonprofits on these types of services.
Yeah. It's long overdue and they don't get marketed to a lot by the most modern companies because it's a tough market to crack into.
I will say, if anybody's listening to this and you're trying to sell to nonprofits or you've decided you shouldn't sell to nonprofits, I will tell you, sell to nonprofits.
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
not because any nonprofit is going to make your quarter or your year. It's because they are the most networked of organizations. And
100%.
you can get one, you can get 12.
Yep. And they're the most grateful customer that you could ever have.
100%. 100%.
Most grateful. And as long as you do well by them, they'll probably stand by your side as long as it economically makes sense for
Yeah.
them.
And it gives you great opportunities to give back through them because you can collaborate in ways that contribute to whatever their cause is.
Yeah, there's 1.5 million nonprofits in the US economy. It's one of the more robust economies out there, and they definitely need a lot of help. They're a little harder to reach because a lot of it's probably going to be sourcing information through the communities, but it's a great group to work with. We really enjoy it. So, can we talk about growth? So, it works. You got to be on like an up and to the right trajectory because I
Right?
just feel like you guys have caught fire over the last few years. What have you learned here and in your previous career about leading revenue growth through fast scaling companies? What are the things that you feel like have made you great at this? Because you don't get to be CRO unless you're really good at this at a company like Justworks.
I'm flattered. I think anything I've learned, I've either learned because I've been very fortunate and worked with really great people and leaders and mentors, or I've stolen them from other people. So I give credit to the universe. I did just join JustWorks in November, so it's been 10 months. And I will tell you through that journey of these last 10 months, what's really gelled for me, again, because this isn't really new, but boy, is it really coming home, is the biggest thing to do is prioritize. Whether you're 10 people or 1,000, you have to prioritize on your highest leverage areas. And for us, that's been investing in people and systems and scalable infrastructure, which is exactly, I think, what every business needs to do. The thing that's different maybe about small businesses, and I think this is true about JustWorks, is that you have to understand prioritization within a set of really clear constraints. We've grown, to your point, significantly, and we're doing quite well, but we've only taken a fraction of capital investment that some other companies have in our space.
Yep.
And so we're constantly evaluating to pick the best option to get better because we can't choose them all. And inevitably, we find that the choice that we make ends up being the one that benefits our customers most. But having a rubric for that and having executive alignment around that rubric is what drives prioritization. And so
Yep.
the lesson that I keep learning is how to talk about prioritization and build a rubric that keeps up with the times with our executive team.
Yeah, it's really top of mind for Highline right now too, right? I think your two biggest constraints are capital and time,
Mm.
right? There's only so much capital you can reinvest and there's only so much time in the day. And I think everything else probably rolls up to one of those two things in terms of how you choose to focus and prioritize. I think I'm learning for first time founder, right? Like focus is a problem. That was a problem for me earlier in my career. I thought I could do everything fast and all the time. That's just not how it works. This is really confusing for folks.
And outsource what you can. That would be my other thing. And I guess that's the twin brother or sister of prioritization.
Yep.
Outsource everything else to trusted partners, or whether it's compliance, payroll, or IT, things we've talked about. Free up your mental energy because that's the key to growth. Don't be complex. That kills momentum. Be
Yep.
simple. That lets you scale. And honestly, we might be living in a golden age, Matt, where we have this thing called AI. And AI can be a form of AI can be a form of outsourcing too. So it just works. I don't know if this will be helpful to you, but it just works. Our mental model is that what would you do if you had 100 interns? Because that's what
Yep.
AI can do for you today. And if you use that mental model and you begin giving work to AI, I think you pretty quickly find that you can get by without actually payrolling 100 interns.
100%. You can do a lot with technology. It just comes down to prioritization and investing in the places where you're going to get the most needle moving from the initiative. And for us, we're trying to help our team understand like sometimes we just got to let some fires burn for a bit because we
Mhm.
can't do it all,
Yeah.
you know?
But that comes from you as the leader, that discipline to let the fire go because they look at you and they say, "Is he panicked? Is he reaching for the fire hose?"
Just got to learn how to walk through the flames, man. It's a learned skill.
Okay.
Can I ask you, like, what's the rubrics you use? Do you guys use an OKR framework? Do you use something different in terms of how you do goal setting?
Yeah, yeah, we've got a set of OKRs and those sort of devolved into KPIs. And I've not spent as much time building them at any other company than I have here. And that's a point of pride for us.
Yeah. That's super powerful if you use them the right way. And you cascade them all the way down through the organization. How far do they go?
We do. So they manifest differently by the time you get to the individual contributor layer. It's less about how they manifest than it is about does everybody who has an element or a touch point understand what it ladders up to?
Yep.
And so you can't have 50 OKRs. We've got now five that weigh anything. And frankly, they're going to change over time.
Yeah. It's just the pace the world's moving, man. Everything's constantly up for renegotiation or reprioritization.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of good tidbits of advice in there, man. Do you have any more like a one liner, any bit of advice you want to give to a small business who's feeling like they're wearing too many hats, bogged down, but they have an opportunity to grow?
It's a heavy ask. But look, I already talked about outsource everything. The second thing is spend 5 minutes looking backwards and 55 minutes looking forward. Like I junked the notion of quarterly business reviews when I got here because it all happened. It doesn't matter. You can't do anything about it. 5 minutes and it sets up an hour long quarterly business preview, which we actually start before the prior quarter ends. So we look at, revenue, cash flow, head count, whatever it is you're forecasting, forecast it for reals in advance and
Yeah.
lock yourself in on that. And I think that really drives a team towards things.
Okay. So you've been very generous with your time, but if you're up for it, maybe like a couple fun rapid fire questions.
Uh-oh, sure.
Okay. Let's see. What's one financial habit every business owner should build?
Man, I think I just gave it. I'm going to just say, I'd say the monthly preview of anything that you want to forecast.
Forecasting, predictive. Yeah. Yeah. You can't underestimate the ability to anticipate and predict the future,
Yeah.
especially if you're a small business, especially if you have capital constraints. You got to get really, really good at that. What's one common misconception about payroll and benefits that you'd love to bust?
Somebody listening to this right now thinks that this is all just back office stuff, but if you do it right, total competitive advantage.
Superpower if you do it right. 100% agree.
Yeah.
All right. Last one. PEO versus HRIS. What's the difference in one sentence to put a bow on this for everyone?
HRIS gives you tools, PEO gives you tools, and takes that work off your plate in a way that either reduces or shifts your risk.
Good pitch. Okay, John, this has been a lot of fun, man. Where can folks find out more about Justworks?
Well, always justworks.com. If you would like to connect with me directly, reference this podcast and shoot me something on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to hear from anybody. And if I can't help you myself, I'm happy to point you in the direction of somebody who can.
Right on, man. Well, John, thank you very much for being here. Lots of good tidbits of knowledge that I appreciate you sharing with us. And we look forward to furthering our partnership between Justworks and Hiline for many years to come.
As do I, Matt. I really appreciate the invite. I hope this was useful to you and everybody else.
100%. This is
Good
great,
luck to
man.
all of us.
Good luck to all of us. LFG. All right, man. John, have a good rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Be well. Cheers, everybody.